Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a powerful, almost hidden force that shapes pretty much our entire lives, our habits. From that first cup of coffee you make every single morning to the way you endlessly scroll through your phone. These automatic behaviors are running the show way more than you probably realize.
So let's just start with a number that might actually blow your mind. A landmark study found that a staggering 43% of what we do every single day, well, it isn't a conscious choice. Just think about that for a second. Nearly half of your day is spent on autopilot, just dictated by these patterns that are etched deep into your brain.
So that brings up a pretty huge question, right? If you're not consciously choosing almost half of your actions, then who or what is really in control? To get to the bottom of that, we first need to understand the blueprint of every single habit. And it turns out it's incredibly predictable.
So, scientists have uncovered this simple, really elegant pattern that our brain follows for every habit we have. It's called the habit loop, and I guarantee you, once you understand how this works, you are going to start seeing it everywhere in your own life.
This four-step cycle is basically the blueprint for everything. It all starts with a cue. Let's say your phone buzzes. That immediately triggers a craving, that little itch, to find out who messaged you. This drives the response. You pick up the phone, and finally, you get the reward, that little hit of information or entertainment. This whole cycle is the engine of our habits. But what's the fuel?
Well, that fuel is a neurotransmitter you definitely heard of, dopamine. But here's the thing, most of us completely misunderstand what dopamine actually does. A lot of people think it's the pleasure chemical, but its real role in our habits is way more subtle and honestly a lot more interesting.
Okay, so here's the key difference. The common myth is that dopamine is the pleasure you get while you're eating a cookie. But the reality is that dopamine is the desire chemical. It spikes before you even take a bite, in anticipation of the reward. It's the craving itself, the motivation, that get-up-and-go signal that drives you to act in the first place.
And this leads us to the million-dollar question. If the habit loop is the same for checking Instagram as it is for going to the gym, why is one so ridiculously easy and the other one so hard? Well, the answer has nothing to do with willpower or being lazy. It all comes down to one thing: timing. See, our brains are fundamentally wired for immediate gratification. A bad habit, like eating junk food or procrastinating on a project, gives you an instant reward. The pleasure, the relief, it's right there, right now. Good habits, like exercising or saving money, they have delayed rewards. Yeah, the benefits are huge, but they're way off in the future. And our ancient brain circuitry will almost always prioritize the immediate win.
So how in the world do we get around this biological programming? Well, the answer isn't to fight it with brute force or sheer willpower. That rarely works. The smarter approach is to stop fighting and start redesigning the system around you. To change our habits, we have to change our environment. Okay, check out this powerful real-world example. Researchers studying organ donation in Europe found this massive difference between countries. In places where you had to actively check a box to opt in to be a donor, the rates were incredibly low, like around 4%. But in countries where being a donor was the default and you had to actively opt out, the rate shot up to 86%. The people weren't any different, the environment was. As the researchers pointed out, we just tend to stick with the default option. It shows just how much our environment shapes our choices without us even noticing. But the good news is, we can become the designers of our own defaults. This brings us to a super practical framework from James Clear's incredible book, Atomic Habits. He outlines 4 laws for changing behavior, but we're going to focus on 2 of the most powerful ones. The first one is simple: make it obvious. This just means engineering your environment so the cues for your good habits are totally impossible to miss. It's all about designing your world for success. I mean, if your gym clothes are laid out, the cue to work out is literally the first thing you see in the morning. If there's fresh fruit on the counter, the cue to eat healthy is visible and easy. And for a bad habit, you do the exact opposite and you make the cue invisible. Don't rely on willpower to avoid junk food, just don't even have it in the house. You're making the right choice the path of least resistance. All right, another game-changing law is to simply make it easy. Our brains are fundamentally wired to conserve energy, which means we instinctively, automatically, choose the option that requires the least amount of effort. So if you want to build a good habit, you have to reduce the friction it takes to get started. This is where the brilliant 2-minute rule comes in. The goal isn't to master the habit on day 1. The goal is just to show up. Want to build a reading habit? Don't commit to a whole chapter, just commit to reading 1 page. The point is to make starting so incredibly easy that you can't say no. That's what builds momentum. And momentum is what turns these tiny actions into lasting habits.
And, when you start applying these laws, something really fundamental begins to shift. You stop focusing on these huge, ambitious goals like running a marathon, and you start focusing on the simple system, like just putting on your running shoes every single morning. The real objective isn't about what you achieve, it's about who you become.
And this right here is the real secret. Every time you lay out your gym clothes or you read that one page, you're not just doing an action, you are casting a vote for a new identity. These small habits are the evidence, the proof that you're becoming a runner or a reader or a writer. Real meaningful change happens when you start believing the evidence of your own small wins. So, understanding the science behind all this is the first step. But the journey really begins with just a single, tiny decision. It's not about some massive overhaul of your entire life overnight. It's just about choosing one small thing you can do right now. So the only question left is, what's one small vote you'll cast for the person you want to become today?